everyone, and welcome back to Thriving Grace. This week we are joined again with a very special guest, but we'll get on to that. This week we're going to be doing our Easter special, which is really exciting. So we're going to get to know our very special guest, and to do that, first of all, just tell us who you are and a bit about you. And then my question this week is, if you could only have one biscuit for the rest of your life, what biscuit would it be?
Wow.
Heavy stuff.
When I normally describe myself, it's normally about what biscuits I choose. So you kind of link the two questions together there quite well. Yes, I'm Louis. I've graduated from Bible College last year. I work for a clothing company in Belfast, which is pretty good. I'm just a glorified Boy Scout there, but it's pretty fun. What biscuit did I choose? I think, just to throw some controversy into one of your previous discussions, it'd have to be a Jaffa cake.
Okay.
I think that'd be the one. I can eat. Actually, there's a chocolate Leibniz, I think they're called. They're like just like a small biscuit with like chocolate that goes around the edge.
Yeah,
and when chocolate goes over the edge of a biscuit, you've kind of broken the law there. And I think they're definitely the ones to have.
What's your reasoning behind picking Jaffa cake as a biscuit? Like, why do you think it classifies as a biscuit?
I think context is everything, and I think it's got an honorary title as a biscuit, rather than it actually being a biscuit. It's definitely a cake, but I think if you serve it as a biscuit, it can be a biscuit for that time being. And I think we put too many boxes around things these days, and it's just nice to break free of those and say, you know what, you might be a cake, but right now you're a biscuit. And that's really what solves it. So whether it's a cake, if not, whilst I'm eating it, it's 100% biscuit. So nice. And I'm happy to give it that title.
I agree.
What would be yours, Ellie?
I was going to say Jaffa cake just to be controversial.
Okay.
But I don't know. I feel like I don't eat that enough, and I feel like the obvious answer for me would be like a Lotus Biscoff, but I prefer the spread than the biscuit.
Oh yeah.
So I might just go for the humble, chocolate digestive.
I think mine's the same,
Oh, okay.
Yeah, or a party ring. I'm a party ring queen.
Yes,
that's strong.
Yeah.
Can we just keep on this discussion?
Can we have a discussion for the whole thing?
Yeah.
But before we get on to our main, what we're going to be talking about, we've set Louis a challenge, and we've literally only just set him this challenge, and he is dreading it, I think, a bit, and it's definitely much heavier than what's your favourite biscuit. So Ellie, do you want to say the challenge that we've set him?
Yes, so we are going to be talking about Easter and I guess what it means to us and what it means for Christians, but we don't want to assume that everyone that's listening knows exactly what is going on. So Bible College must have prepared you for this. We would love it.
That's a lie.
We would love it if to set you a challenge. Abby, do you have some sort of timing situation?
I've got a timer.
Where did we settle on? A minute or 2 minutes? Did we decide a minute? Okay.
Minute. I'm feeling
mean. 2, describe the events of the gospel. Keep us up to speed.
This is actually harder than doing it in the 5,000 word essay. For a Bible college degree. It's so much harder to do it in a minute than it is to write it down in that many words.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm excited to see what you're going to say. Are you
so
ready?
I have no idea what I'm going to say.
Are you ready?
We're all on a journey here. Yeah, go on.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so God in the beginning created the world, loved it, created man and woman, absolutely loved them, breathed into them and gave them life, gave them his spirit, and was like, we're going to live together forever. And a couple of 100 years pass, and man and woman, they're having a great time living it up in the garden. And then one day, this naughty guy comes out of nowhere and tells them, you got to do something God's told you not to do. And they go, well, why did they do that? And they say, well, actually, it's so you can become like God. And Adam and Eve go, okay, that sounds good, and eat it. Eat this apple that they were told not to eat, or whatever fruit it was. And what happens is God comes up to them and goes, why have you done this? They say, well, actually it's so I can be like you. And God says, well, you already like me, that's why we were living together forever. And so God was like, well, you've got to leave the garden, this place is perfect and you're no longer perfect, so I've got 8 seconds left, is that it? And so he sends them out and he says, I've got a rescue plan for you, I'm going to send my son to go and die for you so you can come back to this garden and live with me forever. And that's what he does.
That was trickier than I thought. A lot.
1 minute is I was looking up going, oh, I've only been 10 seconds, I've only been 9 seconds, 8, oh, it's going down, I thought it was going up. I was like, oh, no.
That was so funny. You did well. I definitely
very well.
Been like, very.
If anyone's seen the book of the Bible, you'd realise that trying to get that down into a minute is
a challenge.
Impossible.
It was a challenge.
It was definitely a challenge.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, I wasn't expecting you to get through all of it, but I haven't told Abby this yet. I was thinking we could give you a minute and you could take from where he left.
Why are you putting this on me now? I'm not prepared.
Yeah, I like this.
Gosh.
Just for the sake of the podcast.
Oh gosh. Okay.
I'm gonna have to help Abby out. That is a hard thing to put on someone, especially with this little notice. You gave me about a minute and a half, but giving someone about 10 seconds is pretty rough.
Yeah, you had a few minutes to prepare. Oh, this is so hard, Ellie. Why do you do this to me?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I just felt cheeky on the spot.
Okay. I'm ready.
Okay.
I'll start. Oh. Ready? 3. Oh no, this is going to be a shambles. 2, 1, go. So, as Lewis left off, then Jesus went and died on the cross for our sins. And then he rose from the grave. Mary found him in the empty tomb. He then went and spoke to Mary, told her that he was alive again. She then went to the disciples, told him he was alive again. They didn't quite believe her. He then went to the disciples, showed up to them, showed them they were alive. Oh no, I've got stuck now. Then later fed the 500, appeared to James, and then he went into the 40 days after the resurrection, leading to him ascending to heaven to be eternally with his Father so that we can live in freedom forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
Turned into a sermon at the end now.
It just felt natural. It felt natural.
We're going to get the band back on stage for a bit.
Yeah. With some nice piano in the background.
That was good for just being thrown on you.
Very
impressed.
I feel like I need to throw something on you. You wait. Is this the payback for all of the weird questions that I've asked you?
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
I think what we've found out though is that all of those pages of that book can be condensed to 2 minutes. I feel like the story's more simple than we think.
Yeah, exactly. So this week we're going to be talking about Easter. Obviously it's a massive part of the Christian faith, so it's hard to talk about in one episode, but we're going to try and do our best to kind of share the things that we love about it. So first things first, it feels only right to kick off with our favourite part of the Easter story and like how the Easter story relates to us. So Lewis, what is your favourite part of the Easter story?
What a wild question. It is the centre of Christianity. It's the main event that happened. Obviously Christmas is amazing, but Christmas leads to this, and so this is where like we as a family of Christians started, and so hard to pull out which is my favorite part, but I think probably Jesus on the cross would be a great moment, because he would be in this place unimaginable, in utter pain. He still remained holy, and he still remained completely in love with the people he was dying for. And you can see that through him talking to the other people on the cross. Like if it was me on the cross and other people were chatting to me, I'd just be like, shut up, like I've got to kind of get through this, and I'd get into such a bad state. But he remains just in complete love of people and understanding of what he's doing. And I think that's probably his it's definitely his hardest moment, Jesus' hardest moment, but shows just wholly his character and who he was, and the reason why he's such a great guy to follow.
Yeah, I love that. Ellie, what's your favorite part?
I think my favorite part about Easter, and I think it's something that I've kind of it only really hit me last year, I actually think, is that, like, I don't know how I deserved to be there, you know what I mean? And I think when you think of, like, if I got just a weird analogy, if I got arrested, like, and it wasn't my fault, and someone came over and was like, oh, you know what, I'll take your place in jail, I think I'd kind of be like, oh, okay, you know what, like, it could have been him or me. So go on then, hun. But like, imagine, like, I was guilty, and I got taken into prison, and this guy was like, right, you're off, I'm coming in, I'm taking your place, I'm serving your sentence. I would feel terrible, and I'd be like, oh my goodness, that's like, what kind of man is that? Like, that's incredible. And I guess that is exactly what God has done for us in a modern day context that we can probably understand a bit better, is that we belong from that cross, and he just took it more than willingly. So I think that's my favorite thing to reflect on over Easter. What about you, Abs?
My favorite thing, I'm quite a shifter of what my favorite things of stories in the Bible are, but this year my favorite thing, or the thing that has, I guess, resonated with me the most, is this idea of that joy comes in the morning. And I think, like, pre-Jesus, pre-Mary finding the empty tomb and realizing that Jesus came back to life again, the disciples and everyone around him was so filled with, like, sadness and grief, and almost like the shame of, like, how they acted in those days leading up to when Jesus went on the cross. And I think often, like, that can be how we kind of feel, is like we can live in this shame and in this sadness and grief of all the stuff that's happening around us, but actually what Jesus did at Easter releases so much joy in us, and because he's freed us from all of that feeling of shame and guilt and grief. And I think when I was just rereading it over the last, like, couple of weeks, even before Jesus died on the cross, he prepared the disciples for what was going to happen. And he literally said to them in John 16, I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. And he's literally telling them, you're going to be sad, you're going to be upset, you're going to be filled with grief, but you're going to be filled with so much peace and so much joy out of what I've done. And he gives us that exact same reassurance. And I think that for me is, like, my favorite thing of, like, no matter what happens in day-to-day life, he tells us that he can just fill us with so much joy because he's taken all of this pain and sadness that we feel away. And I think, that's probably my favorite part of it.
Love that.
Yeah. So one thing that I think, when I was thinking about the Easter story, is because it's such a big story, obviously we can't talk about everything, but there are these, like, little moments throughout that I guess we pick up on the more times you read it as well. So I think it's quite intriguing to know what other parts that you've, like, picked up on. So Lewis, what would you say is, like, your favorite, maybe, like, unseen or overlooked moment, or, like, forgotten moment in the Easter story?
Forgotten moment. Wow, yeah. I think one thing we like to do when we look at stories is take, if it involves a character, we take a very specific event or context towards that character and think that that's what that means to them. What, in saying that, explaining, I mean, these people like Peter, James, John, they've lived lives, they're probably 20, 30 years old, and they've had this whole life, and there's so much that goes on inside of them. And when Jesus does something towards them or says something to them, it's never specifically to one context in their life, like, their sadness towards one event, or, their pain from something. It's towards everything, the accumulation of their life. And so we can often look at one thing and think that it has one context behind it, but actually has loads of context, because it's a person that Jesus is relating to, not an event. And so It's I think every single aspect of the Easter story really shows that in loads of different ways, where you could look at a story from one context and see, oh, this means something, and look at it in another way and it means something different. Leading up to the Easter story, Jesus heals his friend Lazarus, who has passed away, from a very similar thing which Jesus is going to save himself from, which is death. In a very similar way, they move away the tomb, and out they come to well, it was Mary and Martha there, but it's another Mary here crying over the person they've lost. But I think one thing that would relate to what Ellie said earlier was that the person whose death it should have been was us, and one person knew this most, and that would have been Joseph, and he offered Jesus to have his tomb, and he said, when he dies, I'll put him into my tomb, because I think Joseph understood that Jesus' death should have been his death. And that Jesus didn't have a tomb because it shouldn't have been Jesus' death, it should have been Joseph. So Joseph said, if he's going to take my death, he can take my tomb. And so he puts him in the place where he should have been when he died. I think that's such a really good example of what the Easter story shows, is that Jesus took our death. And then what happens is, we all know the story, as we quickly brushed over in the 2 minutes.
We do now.
We definitely do now. We know it all. 2 minutes, we had the whole story. There was a stone that sat in front of the tomb, and to go into Bible college stuff, I try to stay away from this, but the same word that is used for stone that they used in front of the tomb would have been the same word that they would have used for the law of Moses, which was written on the tablets of stone. And so we have this picture of the one thing that's holding Jesus back from leaving the grave is this law. And Jesus says, okay, I'm going to move the law out of the way. Now, the law was the reason why people were kept in this grave, or kept in death. And Jesus dies and then moves the law out of the way and says, actually, I'm creating this freedom. So the law's no longer there to hold you in death. I've moved out of the way. So from your tomb, which I died in, you can now exit and go back into life. And I think that's such a powerful thing when you realize that everything that Jesus did, I should have done. And so he did everything. He did all of that for me, so that I never need to. And so then when I say to, hey, God, hey, I want to, like he asked us to do, we must die to ourselves and we must be born again. We die, we go into this tomb, and God's already moved the law, moved the stone out of the way and said, leave, just leave, go and live life, go and enjoy the fullness of life that I died so that you could have. And I think that gives you so much freedom every day. And those kind of things are missed in the kind of grandeur of the story.
Yeah, I did not know that about the stone. That is really cool. And I love that, just that imagery of the thing separating us and Jesus was this stone, but also this law, and he literally blew that away so that we can have a relationship with him. And I love that. That's so cool.
What's yours, Ellie?
I guess leading on from what Louis was saying about context, I guess for me, if I was to put myself into the story, I'm a woman, and so I would have a different context to, I don't know, the disciples or whatever. So my favorite part that I think it doesn't go unseen, but I think it's not talked about, is I believe it only appears in John chapter 20, is when Mary Magdalene is the first to find Jesus. And I think it should be noted that women were the last at the cross and the first at the tomb, and that he trusted them with the gospel. And I think that is a lot to be said about that. But what I think is really interesting, and I think should be noted more, is she didn't recognize him until he said her name. And I think there's something so personal about that. I don't know, but there's very few people that if you just said my name, I would actually know who that was. Probably my mum, because I hear it all the time, especially if it's Helen.
Full name.
Yeah. But I think just the way that before, she might not necessarily have known. And I guess it is kind of leading on from that moving the law and it now being a personal relationship between the two of them, and that he could say her name and she could be Jesus, Rabbi. And I love that kind of image of them two just kind of I don't know, just her being the first to fall at his feet and be like, oh my goodness, wow. And also I love the way that he's like, don't cling to me, because I think like I would be, if Jesus died and he came back, I would just be like, Jesus, like, don't go again, like, come back. But he's been like, no, don't cling to me because I'm here forever. You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to cling to me anymore. You know, and I think that's so cool. So just that whole story, I love. Yeah. What about you, Abby?
My favorite part, well, unseen moment, I guess. I don't think it's that unseen, I don't know, but I think it's more the bigger picture of like that in the Bible, there's only really two kind of examples and evidence of two people actually, two of the disciples actually being where they are at the time of when Jesus is on the cross. And I think the first one is that Peter hid, and then the other one was that it's described in John 19 that one of the disciples, there was the disciple whom he loved at the foot of the cross, and that is then taken as that was John. And I think, I don't know about you, but I think often the weeks around Easter, I'm very much at the foot of the cross. Like I'm there, I'm like taking in the story again, like loving it, like realizing what it means for me and all of this. But then like say the other 360 days of the year, I can often feel as if I can think like, oh yeah, I'm always at the foot of the cross with Jesus, I might always with him, but actually there are these things that I'm like keeping from him, or there are these ways that I'm like running from him or hiding from him, like Peter was doing. And I think John being described as the one whom he loved doesn't mean that Jesus didn't love Peter, because the reason he went on the cross was for the Peters of us. Like we're all Peters in the world. Like he went on the cross for that reason, because he loved us even when we hide. And I think, I don't know, but when I was just reading that again, I was like, the fact that he's just described as the one whom he loved, it's Jesus just loves us to be at the foot of the cross with him, and he doesn't call us to be perfect, and he doesn't, I don't know, I think it was just this picture of like, he's not wanting us to be like off serving 24/7, like doing our own thing, and as much as that's great, he just wants us like the full center of it to just be with him and at the foot of the cross, and just understanding that and understanding what that means for us. And I think that was my big thing of like the Easter story, is like to be at the foot of the cross, not just for those 5 days of Easter weekend, but the whole year. And I think, yeah, that's something that I think we can always get wrapped up in Easter being for Easter, but actually Easter is for every single day of our lives, and we can take it into every single day of our life. And I think we should do that more. So
yeah, that's really good. I'd say that there's points in your life where you can get angry at God, or you can get upset at God, or even when he's quiet, you go, I don't understand what you're doing, I don't understand what you're trying to say. But you can always go back to that moment in time and realize everything he does, everything he is perfect. And even if he just did that one thing, it was more than enough. And so it's a constant event you can always go back to when you go, okay, actually I just need to know what God's doing. I need to not be angry at him. Like I want to understand why he's good. And you go back to that moment, you go, I can always come here and fall in love with you. Like every single time I can come here and realize what you did. This is more than enough. My problem that I'm facing right now, it pales in comparison to the stuff that you've done here. And I know that if you could do this, you can easily come into this moment that I've got right now and show me how good you are. And I understand that if you're not doing that right now, there's a good reason for it, but I'll just stay here at the foot of the cross until you come now and show me something new. That's really cool.
I love that. And I love the way that you're saying, like, we're calling it like the Easter story, but like it's not the Easter story, it's our story, you know what I mean? It's our testimony. And I think in the past I've been kind of scared to share my testimony, or like, but I remember my friend telling me, she's like, Ellie, like, it isn't your story, it's God's story. And if someone's not like gonna judge, like if someone's gonna judge you for that, then like they're judging God for that, and that's crazy. And I actually think like when we tell our testimonies, we should start from like 0 BC, you know, and because it is our story. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, so true. I love what you were saying, Louis, about like going back to that even when it's like, God, I can't hear you, and just like going back to that story. That's definitely something I'm going to start doing, which is great for my next question, because often as you say, we can leave the Easter story to Easter, but actually, how would you say the Easter story like changes your everyday? Like, what things do you apply from the Easter story to your everyday, and what impacts you in July, not just now?
Yeah. It being the main event, I'd say, in history, from being a Christian, you'd understand it's in history, and when you fully understand that we're, like you said, living the story of God, it is the center of that story as well. And so it's the moment where everything that was broken starts to be healed. Up to that point, things were getting more and more broken, more and more, further away from what God had created. And it was that point when Jesus came and died on the cross that he started going, this is us fixing it again. And we're heading back in the right direction this time. So I think that's a really good place to start. How it can affect you every day is knowing that changed spanned the boat around and headed back in the right direction. How it affects my everyday, I think it really links in with the title of your podcast, Thriving Grace. It's the grace that Jesus shows in this moment that means that I can wake up every day thriving or living fully in freedom. So because mercy is not giving what you deserve, which is what he did on the cross, and then when he rose again, he gave grace, which is giving you what you don't deserve. So it's not giving you what you do deserve, it's then giving you more on top of that, and you even don't deserve that. And so he constantly gives from that position. I think Jesus was really wise, really smart guy, because leading up to that moment, you kind of think there's a lot of context, a lot of substance going on in the Easter story. You go, oh, it can be quite confusing. But then you look back and you realize his whole time he's been speaking, he's just been explaining it, so that when it happens, you go, okay. And one of the stories would be the prodigal son. And it's such a common, like, this is the main story. But I think that there's absolute merit for that to be the case, because it's a perfect picture of our relationship with God at that moment in time. And yeah, so when Jesus died on the cross, he then forgives us of our sins, because he takes all of our sins, past, present, and future, on us at that moment in time. And then he says, I'm going to take these into the grave. You're not going to go to the grave with them anymore. Because to the Jewish people, to die was to stand in front of God and be judged. And Jesus said to them, I want you to die. I want you to die today. Whilst you're still alive, I want you to die, which is actually saying to them, I want you to stand in front of God today and be judged. Not until you're at the end of your life, when you've got it all sorted and you've paid all your sins and you've sacrificed all the pigeons and goats or whatever it was, and you've done all that stuff. I want you to choose being judged today. And so that's what we do. We go and stand. I was 4 years old. I don't know how old you were when you said to God, hey, I'm sorry for all this. But I stood in front of God and I said, I'm going to take my death today. And God said, okay. And he judged me in that moment. And instead of judging me, he looks at Jesus on the cross and he goes, okay, well, that man's perfect. He's my son. And so you're going to get what he should have got. And so Jude Smith puts really well. He says he treats us like treats Jesus like us, so that he can treat us like Jesus. And so we get this kind of grace given to us from that moment, and we get to walk out. From 4 years old, I got given this gift of eternal life, and I get to live that every day now, because Jesus took my death instead on that cross. And then what the prodigal son shows us is that the father doesn't just forgive the son in the story of the prodigal son of what he's done. He then takes him back into the home and gives him a house again and a family. And that's what Jesus does when he comes back. He adopts us back into relationship with him. So he doesn't just forgive us and be like, yeah, I'm like, there's no debt between us, that's all good. And then we go, hey, can we come back in? And he goes, nah, we're all done now. He goes, yeah, come back in. And so he gives us more and more, and he just continues to give us more than what we deserve. And we deserve stuff in the negative, but actually he starts to give us stuff in the positive. And you can wake up every day and go, surely there's no more you've got to give me. And he goes, actually, I've got more.
Yeah, love that.
That's so good. Yeah, I think I agree in the sense that, like, I think sometimes we can, I don't know, kind of start to think we deserve more than we do. And you know, you're like, oh, why don't I have that job? Why don't I have that car? Like, whatever you are after. But I actually think the story of Easter, it like grounds us to the fact that actually like we've already had way more than we deserve. And so like, yeah, I think that definitely, it humbles us. But at the same time, I think, you know, like the world is so fickle on like, you know, with things like cancel culture and like, I don't know, like celebrity, like idolatry. And thank you. I coined it myself.
Nice.
And yeah, no, like to the extent that I don't even know if I'm meant to love or hate Justin Bieber at the moment, because it just goes so much. I'm not sure. I think we like him at the moment. His new album.
Oh, you gotta love him. Just always love him.
Yeah. But like, and I think it can be like that. Like, you don't have to be a celebrity to feel that, you know, like we have it with your friends or whatever. If you don't have a good friendship group around you, I know I didn't until I left school, you can like make one move wrong and suddenly you're no longer of interest, of worth, of whatever. And I think in the everyday for me, the Easter story just reminds me that like no matter what that happens, like Jesus is a constant, and he constant, like if I was to do, you know, if I was to excel or if I was to lose a lot of cool points, he still would have died for me and he still loves me. And just that security and that is what I get from the everyday, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. I think my everyday thing is, I think there's a conversation that Jesus has with Thomas before the days leading up into when he went onto the cross. And I think I was literally reading it the other day and I was like, Thomas is literally me. And he basically is in this conversation where Jesus is telling the disciples that they're going to follow him and they're going to be with God. But Thomas's reply is, Lord, we don't know where you are going, so how can we know the way? And I'm like, Thomas in this situation kind of knows, like, okay, Jesus, I've got that you told me that I'm going to be with God. Like, I get kind of what you're saying, but how are we going to get there? And being quite a practical thinker, that would be me. I'm like, okay, Jesus, I've understood what you told me to do, but how am I going to get there? And his reply, I just love it, is he simply just says, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. If you really know me, you will know my Father as well. From now on, you do know him and have seen me. And I think whether we have all felt like a Thomas, I think, at some point in our lives, like either not knowing where we're going or knowing where we're going, but not knowing how to get there. And I think the Easter story in my everyday just helps me with those times of uncertainty, of like, no matter how unsure I'm feeling or how uncertain I'm feeling about where I'm going or where Jesus is taking me, all we need to do, just as he says, is just draw close to the Father, because he is the way and the truth and the life. And I think he just shows us, and I think the Easter story as a whole just gives us this freedom and just this reassurance to just be able to lean back on him completely. And I think often we can forget that because we try so much. We live in a society where it's like, I've got to take these things on and deal with it on my own. But actually, like, the Easter story just lets us have complete freedom from that and just be like, you know what, God, I'm giving you control, even over like the smallest things. And I think that's something that I can sometimes forget. Like the big things, I'm like, yeah, Jesus has that under control. But the small things, I'm like, no, this is not for me to deal with. But actually, like, I'm going to give this to you because you're going to be the truth in this situation. And you're going to bring life to these situations that I'm facing right now. And I think especially with everything that we're facing in the world and the uncertainty that we're in, Jesus just promises us that he's the way and the truth and the life. And I think it's just the ultimate just little phrase of like, that is the truth that we need for facing every day. So yeah,
so good.
So that is our Easter special.
Oh, can I throw in another question then?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, at least full of the surprises.
I'm sorry. So having said all that, if this is, I guess, someone's first, I guess, hear of, you know, we've so well explained the gospel, and now we've chatted about what it means for us, what would you say to that person now, after hearing all that? What would you now say?
I think the gospel does one major thing, and that's is show people who they are, and it gives an identity. And I think identity is everything to everyone, and only very recently has that really become such a prominent topic. But I think when God made man and woman, he called them perfect, and I think we find it very hard to see ourselves as perfect. And sin entered the world, which is the lack of God, or the opposite of what God is. It's darkness, which is the lack of light. It's not a substance in itself, it's just the absence of light. And so sin being the absence of God, we can often put that upon ourselves and call ourselves darkness. We can give ourselves a value that's nothing. I think Jesus dying on the cross shows us he still sees us as perfect. So whether you're 7 years old to 100 years old and you've had a life which you are proud of or not proud of, God will look at you exactly the same as he always has and goes, you're perfect, even to the point that you're worth dying for. And so he has always seen and always has, and actually it's the sin, it's the absence of him that is actually the pain that we feel, and the pain that we actually give as well. And so God gives us the freedom from that stuff, from the stuff that we do and the stuff that we receive. He says, that's not the perfect you are created. I made you perfect, and that's how I still see you. And we can get rid of that stuff, and let's just be me and you perfect again.
Yeah,
so good.
So good.
Can't top that.
No, can't. Great place to end. So thank you so much, Louis, for joining us today.
No problem.
This was so much fun.
It's been amazing.
So great.
I've learned a lot.
Yeah, me too. Ellie, you have to plug our Instagram, of course.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Everyone, go check us out. It's at thrive.in.grace.
Yes. And if you are watching, you can also listen on Spotify. But if you're just listening, you can also watch on YouTube, just an FYI, in case you want to see our faces, or if you want to see what Louis looks like. I know I'd be nosy to know. So, thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed, and we will see you for our next episode.
Well, no, we won't.
Well, it will be the next episode.
There will be another one.
Yeah.
We're not ending.
No.
This is the end of the season, isn't it?
Yes, end of the series.
Season finale.
Yes.
We need a cliffhanger.
Finale.
We need to have some sort of
a cliffhanger.
Drawback. Yeah. I can pretend to die here if you want. Just
oh wow!
See what happens.
Who killed you?
Yeah, so much fun.
Who's done it.